Hey folks, welcome to my talk. It's called Global Gaming Local Flair, Crafting UEFN's Cultural Crossover Through Music and Humor. Hope you all have lunch, yeah? Hope you're not too sleepy because this talk is essentially meant to inspire all of you to kind of like seed an idea, saying, hey, these are all the things that you could also do in UEFN. Because typically you've seen a lot of shooter games, you've maybe seen some kind of like, top-down games that Samuel, my colleague, was talking about, but there was also like a lot of shooting. But there's also things that you could make in UEFN that is from your own backyard, that is from your own country, that is from your own culture. And I'm going to show you some tricks, some that is the technical aspect of my talk, where I'll just show you some tricks on bringing in some of the assets that you yourself found in your backyard and in your country, in your city. And that's pretty much what my talk is all about. I will also talk slightly about the business end of things. I do speak to a lot of studios who are using UEFN, and there's been learnings from them, some tips and tricks, from their learnings, because there's no one path to a successful UEFN island. There's many, but typically we see some rhythms, we see some patterns that we think, or other studios in fact think, have made them successful. So to begin with, this is a quote I love from Tim Sweeney, right? Of all the ways you can engage with your friends, it's awesome to be together in person. It's awesome to be together in Fortnite, either playing Battle Royale or going to a concert. And this is something that we see all the time, especially with the Gen Z and even Gen Alpha, where a lot of folks, in fact, prefer hanging out in Fortnite and being more productive even inside Fortnite. And this is going beyond just the Western world, right? I am from India. I'll talk about myself in just a bit of time, but I'm from India, and we are seeing so many UEFN experiences from all around the world. And here's some examples. There's like Airship Wars by Beyond Creative, which is probably quite famous. Beyond Creative is a fairly famous UEFN studio, and they are based, in fact, in Europe and in Canada, and they made this amazing game, which is more like a pit kind of a game. And then from Japan, we have this amazing looking concert from the star called Kiara Pomyu, and she had a fantastic looking experience, which all looks like a very Japanese kind of central Tokyo kind of a feel. And all of this was done again independently without Fortnite's help, all done for her own concert. And then we have horror games coming from a roguelike studio like Havoc Hotel, where you have these kind of like post-processing effects that's kind of running, where you have to, again, it's a shooter game, it's a roguelike game, but it's something that you typically don't see in a UEFN kind of experience. And from my neck of the woods, we have the Himalayan Arena, where these were assets that were made from capturing using photogrammetry from temples, and also some custom made assets. And this is again like a pit like arena, but it looks distinctively Indian. Another example is Lofi Girl. Lofi Girl is also on UEFN these days, and you can I think it's a cultural thing. That by itself is a culture. And then you have like side-scrolling games. This is from Shadow Spirit. So your camera angles have now changed. You don't have to be only third person anymore. And even you could go to Mars. There's a billionaire battle pit with a fight between two billionaires who are quite famous, I guess, who've been like trying to take over Mars, and you kind of have to be in one of their teams and try to appease your boss, who's a billionaire. So there's so many kinds of games. There's concerts. There's Mars battle pits. There is horror games. There is a side-scrolling games. So you can see you are able to achieve high quality, but how do you also attract a culturally diverse audience using the same kind of techniques that's typical with UEFN? So for this talk, I worked with a studio in India called Green Drain and another studio called Antara, and we kind of helped put together this map. And this is the map that we'll be using during this talk. And this is a map where you kind of walk around, and all of the music that you hear is from Patchwork, which is a new system inside UEFN, custom created especially for this island. You also see an NPC, kind of a guy kind of with nice mutton chops, kind of running away from you because he doesn't like me, I guess. And then and based on which part of the island you go, that was like a traditional island with a lot of cool-looking assets, and this is more like a dystopian one. Again, playing music custom created using patchwork. So during this talk, I'll essentially be running through how to make your own custom music, how to import NPCs, how to import metahumans and make them into non-playing characters. I'll also talk about how you can import your own assets that you have done using photogrammetry, and I'll also show you how to change camera angles. And this is a game that we made with patchwork, where essentially based on the light that you're seeing on the top right there, you got to jump on the tile that matches that light, and if you don't jump, you kind of die. It's still kind of like a work in progress, but that's kind of what we'll be looking at today. So the features that were used for this particular experience was reality scan, Quixel mixer, metahumans, where we're using mesh to metahuman, and we also used patchwork. So let's dive into the technical part of the talk. So for reality scan, it's quite straightforward. Have your phone, and I've been using this quite extensively. It's become like my hobby these days, where everywhere I travel, I'm just using the reality scan app to find some interesting looking art asset. And it's available both on Android and iOS, which is awesome. And you can just scan those assets. They get uploaded to the Sketchfab server, or Fab at this point of time. And once you do that, you download the asset, and the way to import it inside UEFN is straightforward. Just click on import. I'm just going to navigate to where my asset is. It's the OBJ file, and it's also I also need to make sure that I get the normal maps and the texture. Once I get to that, just using the default options, I'm not doing much, and that's it. And now I have my asset. That's a pillar that's actually next to my home, and I just dragged it inside UEFN, and now I have a nice looking Indianish pillar because I'm from India, and now that's part of my game that I can use. But one of the first problems that you would see when you import photogrammetized assets is that the number of triangles or number of polygons in this is quite high. And there is a size limit, which I'll talk about in just a bit. And you can reduce the number of polygons right inside UEFN by just opening up the asset editor and just reducing the number of triangle percentage. Like, I just reduce it to 50%. And you notice that now my size, even though the fidelity of that asset is still maintained, the number of polygons has reduced considerably. Which is a nice trick, which I use all the time when you're bringing in assets that are quite heavy. The other thing that I often see when you're bringing in photogrammetized assets, and this is, by the way, a little statue I had at home. I kind of photogrammetized it. And if I open up, when I scanned it, that also came with the stool at the bottom. And I don't really care about this tool at the bottom. So you could go to Maya or Blender and then remove it. But the modeling tools in UEFN is quite amazing. And in fact, you don't have to get out of UEFN in order to start playing around with existing assets. So in this case, all I have to do is go under my modeling section. And under modeling section, there's a lot of tools that exist. In fact, there is there's this. In fact, you can also reduce triangles over there. But my favorite one is planar cut. And I'm just going to select planar cut right there. And what that'll do is anything that's under a certain plane will just get removed. So I'm just going to just position that plane in a way that I'm just going to cut off the bottom part of the statue. And that's it. And that will enable me to kind of play around with assets, especially photogrammetized assets, where you often get artifacts that you don't really care about. And assets doesn't have to be always photorealistic. If you're going to be using Quixel Mixer, you can really stylize those assets to make it look whatever way you want. And of course, Quixel Mixer is free. So, if you have like a realistic looking asset, and if you have a certain style of the game, you could just drag your assets inside Quixel Mixer and then make it your own. The next part really is about metahumans. And in metahumans, I'm currently using Unreal Engine, but this is the exact workflow that you'd also use in UEFN. I just scanned the face, and I'm just bringing the face in, just importing that face into UEFN. And once I do that, I have to just create a metahuman identity. Just right click on a metahuman animator. Just create a metahuman identity. By the way, this is the same name. I'm just calling that MHI Progman. And this is the exact same name that you would see in the metahuman creator when we start playing around with it. I'll show you in just a bit. Once you create the metahuman identity, just going to open it up, and this is the window that you would see. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a component, search for the mesh that I had scanned. And this could be your own face. In this case, I just scanned some mesh. But I'm just going to select that face mesh. And this is what I see. This is the face. And I need to add a track at the bottom so that becomes my front view of that mesh, because metahuman identifier needs to know what is the front face or what's the front part of the metahuman so that it can automatically identify the features of the metahuman. It could be like the eyes, eyebrows, nose, and so on. With that done, I'm just going to lock my camera, and that will then lock that front face of that metahuman. And I need to just click on identify markers, and that's it. Now it kind of did a pretty bad job about identifying my markers. It thought my eyeball, because there was no eyeballs, but it thought my eyeballs was at the top and my eyelids were like kind of closed. And this is how it identified my metahuman. But that's not the end of it. You could go ahead and edit it. So if once the front face is locked, you could just drag the markers and kind of make sure that it's aligned to the exact face that I had imported. If you have your own importing, you just kind of like do a little bit of work, just dragging the little markers. And this is what I'm doing. And at the end, this is what I had. I kind of like made it a little more appropriate, even though it couldn't find the exact the eyes and the eyebrows. If you have a high quality scan, it'll find it a lot better. But if you have a low poly mesh like I did, then it has a little bit of difficulty identifying the features. Once it's done, I just need to click on the identity solver, and I just need to make sure that the metahuman identity solver is able to convert this mesh into a metahuman, and that's exactly what it does. If I click on the A and B, if I just toggle between it, you can see that it has now created the metahuman based on the mesh that I had created. And that's it. The next thing I really need to do is just upload it to the metahuman creator, which is like a button on the top. So you just go to the mesh to metahuman, upload it, and it'll show an error if you do the full metahuman part, where it'll say you have to select a body part, because it's not just the face, but you also have the body that you need to select. And you can select any body part because you can then change it later in the metahuman creator. That's it. And once it's done, you'll see a nice message saying like, hey, the metahuman DNA is now available in your content browser. And now you can go ahead to the metahuman creator and play around with it. And this is the processed metahuman. So it's in all 3D. It's not just the front-facing part. The next thing you need to do is go to the metahuman creator website and just launch the metahuman creator. And on the right-hand side, you'll see that that's the MHI Progman, which is the identifier name I had created. I just need to select it and edit it. Obviously, there's no skin on this guy, so I just need to go to skin, make sure that I add some texture to the skin, and I can also add hair. And the rest of the stuff, like I'm just going to go to head, I'm just going to add some kind of hair. Yeah, that works. Maybe add the mustache. Typical things that you would do with the metahuman, but this is the scan phase, and you can customize the hell out of it. Once that's done, I can then import the metahuman in UEFN by going to the metahuman importer, and I just need to go to the metahumans that I had created. And I had created 2 metahumans. That's my MHI Progman metahuman. This typically takes a little bit of time based on the quality. So here I have the quality set to medium quality. And that's it. Once it's downloaded, it's just going to be added to your asset. Just click on the add button. It's going to scan it and then drop it into UEFN. Now, it creates a blueprint or creates an asset with MetaHuman, which is under Progman. There's like a MetaHuman folder that gets created, and you can drag and drop the blueprint inside the scene. But this doesn't do anything. Like if you just drag and drop the NPC or the metahuman into the world, it doesn't do anything. It's just like kind of standing in the T pose. So if you want to make the metahuman do something cool or add a behavior to it, you got to add the newly added, or it's currently in early access, which is the NPC spawner. So in order to add the NPC spawner, just go to your content browser. I'm just going to delete this guy. I don't need that blueprint anymore. I'm just going to go under Fortnite. I'm just going to search for NPC spawner. And it should be right down there. Drag it into my scene. And you'll notice that this is not the metahuman I created. This is the default Fortnite character. Then how do I then replace the Fortnite character with my NPC or with my metahuman? This is where you need to add two components or two behaviors to the NPC spawner. There is the behavior, and there's also the character definition. I'm just going to create a new character definition from my details panel. I'm just going to name it like, I already created a progman device, so I'm just going to call it another progman NPC character definition. And this is the file where I can define the behavior of my NPCs. So with that asset open, there are a few things I can go in there. I can add what is the type of NPC character type. There is a guard, there's wildlife, there's also custom. I'm just going to add custom. And there's also the behavior, which I'll get to in a little bit of time. And I also need to make sure that my modifiers in there, the cosmetic modifier is going to be not my Fortnite character, but it's going to be a custom character, which is going to be my metahuman. I'm just going to go and search for my MHI progman. It should just show up in a bit. There you go. And drop that. And now my NPC is going to be replaced by, instead of the Fortnite character, it's going to be my character. And I'm also going to make sure that the animation preset is set to the metahuman animation preset because it is a metahuman. Once that's done, this is just going to replace my NPC that's going to be spawned with my metahuman, but we need to give it some behavior. We need to tell it how should the metahuman behave inside the world. And to do that, we need to add an NPC behavior verse script right there, the NPC behavior script override. So I'm going to open up my verse explorer and right click and create a new verse script. As soon as I create a new verse script, it's going to give me options of an NPC behavior and NPC behavior basic, which are just pre-filled verse scripts that you can start using. And it's completely documented right inside the verse script itself. So I'm just going to name it progman NPC behavior. And I'm just going to open it up. And if I open it up, this is the verse script. It's just going to open up in Visual Studio Code or Visual Code, and you can see that it's well documented. It's really well covered. And it'll tell you exactly all the things that, or all the behaviors, or how should the NPC be behaving based on, like, player interaction, or in terms of like some quest that gets solved or whatever. Once that's done, all you need to go back to the identity manager and just set the behavior to be the progman NPC behavior, and that's it. And now the metahuman is NPC-fied, I guess. And if I go in, you can see that this is the default behavior of the NPC. Is no longer in a T pose. It's kind of walking away from me because he hates me. But he's kind of walking around and doing his own stuff. And all the collision stuff are all taken care of for you already. And that's it. And that's kind of how easily you can add your own character, people that right inside the game, and make them NPCs. And if you're also using the stand-up comedy template that's available with UEFN already, you can also essentially swap the default characters that's available inside the stand-up comedy template with the exact same process of adding an NPC, which is a metahuman. So that's kind of how you add a metahuman into your game. The next thing is patchwork. Now, these are the two folks who created the music for the game that I just showed. And the one on the left is Manan, and the guy on the right is Murthy. We kind of introduced them to how to create music. They were sitting in the studio and they just went on and on about using patchwork. Now, one thing about patchwork is It's like any other device that you would use inside UEFN. You can drag and drop them from UEFN into Fortnite, but you can only hear the music when you are inside Fortnite creative mode. And you can't hear the music while you're in UEFN, which is actually pretty nice because the two people who were creating the music had no idea about how to use UEFN at all. So they just went into Fortnite and this is how they were creating music. They just dropped the patchwork devices and started hearing the music and then tying those devices together to then create the music for this island. And this is what they ended up with. So this is what they made. Okay. Pretty cool music. And all the assets that you're seeing in this island are all done using photogrammetry from my neck of the woods. And there's our NPC guy kind of running around. But just having this kind of music you need to make it work, right? You need to make it useful into your island, which is why we then made it into a game. So patchwork is of course also accessible through verse. So as I mentioned earlier, depending on the lights that's showing up over here, it's going to you kind of have to jump the tiles. But this camera angle didn't really work for us. We wanted more a top-down angle so that we could see the camera, or so we could see the lights a lot better. So we have the ability to change the camera now. So there's the early access camera angle. So if you go under early access under Fortnite devices, you have 4 different camera angles, from fixed angle to fixed point to camera orbit to their regular third-person cameras. So I am just going to drag the orbit camera, and it's super easy to set up. That's it. I just need to drag the device. Automatically, all the players who are going to be in this level will now be in the orbiting top-down camera. And of course, I can go into my details panel and just change the angle from which the orbiting camera is going to work. Like I can change the field of view. That's that's too close. Maybe make it 100. I can also change the distance in which the camera is going to be looking at. And that's, of course, something that you can look at from the preview of the camera itself. And then you can also offset the camera in whichever way you want it. And once that's done, this is what I have. Now I have, instead of the typical third-person view, I now have a orbiting camera that's kind of like on the top, and I can see those lights a lot better. The final thing I also want to talk about in the technical part of things is keeping an eye on your project size. That's very important because if you go under Tools, Project Size, you need to make sure that your entirety of the project is under 2 gigabytes and the download size of the assets that are going to be downloaded by the players is less than 400 megabytes. Surprisingly, in this island, I had 2 metahumans. In fact, one of my friends added like 6 metahumans, and each of them just contributed about 60 megabytes to the entire game size, which was surprising because metahumans on Unreal Engine is quite heavy, whereas on UEFN, it's been optimized so well that you don't even see them right here. But just keep an eye on it. If you're adding a lot of metahumans, if you're adding a lot of photogrammetized assets, make sure that your project size doesn't exceed that much. And I'm not a level designer, but if you are designing levels, there is a really great article on the Epic developer community which gives you the best practices of how to create a good-looking UEFN level. So if you want to scan that QR code or go to that website, just go do it. I'll let everyone just let it be there for a while. I think everyone's done taking pictures. All right, next let's get to the business part of things, which is the learnings and case studies based on all the conversations I've been having with a bunch of UEFN studios around the world. First thing is team composition. What makes a successful or what makes a viable UEFN team? What we have discovered is there's essentially 4 pods to it. You need to have a good level and game designer team, or even just one person, who understands the Fortnite culture. These are like storytellers who have been playing Fortnite and they understand what makes an engaging UEFN experience. And the second pod would be the people who are going to be implementing the idea of the game designers. So once the game designers have this idea, you need to have artists, you need to have animators, you need to have like verse script writers who can then implement it, and that team can also, it doesn't have to be too big, but you need to have that kind of a pod who can implement the level design. The third pod would be your influencers and marketing folks, because in promoting your island is as important as you creating the island. Because you're getting a lot of content, a lot of UEFN island that's getting uploaded on Fortnite. So if you want visibility, you better also get your marketing and influencers ready, so that they are able to set the right campaign and trigger the community based on any event or whatnot. And finally, you need live ops, because when you publish a UEFN game, it is not a boxed product. You need to get continuous feedback from the players so that you're able to update the game over and over again based on feedback, based on events, based on even pop culture. So you need to have a team, or you need to have a pod, I would say, who is looking at live ops and also looking at analytics. The analytics dashboard inside UEFN is quite amazing. And in fact, there's also an analytics device that's been added, which gives you even more insights on the playability of our island. So keep an eye on it all the time, so that you could continue iterating on the game, and it keeps going around. So based on the feedback of the live ops folks, the game designers are going to improve the game. The improved game is going to be made by the artist, and the marketing people are going to then talk about it, and live ops is going to monitor it. And this is kind of the cycle that we keep seeing in a lot of UEFN studios who have been finding it quite useful. The other learnings is also, if you are talking about your game, let's say you have an influencer or a Fortnite player playing the game, one of the pitfalls that we saw is the streamer was playing in one server. Let's say they were playing in the Middle Eastern server, but the audience were all based in, let's say, the US. So when they were trying to get together to play the game, they were all in different servers. So essentially, the influencer was playing by himself or herself. So kind of avoid that. Make sure that when you're streaming, that all of your players are in the same server as you are. Search bar is one of the easiest ways in which people are discovering islands inside Fortnite. So add a lot of tags, because tags help a lot. So keep adding tags, as many tags as possible, so that your island gets discovered as in an easier manner. Also, don't have complex names for your maps. I'm from India, and there's like 24 different languages. And if I have an island that is funny in my language, but no one else can even type it, then your map is not going to get discovered. So keep the name of your island quite simple, so that it's easily searchable. The other thing is, try to update your game every 2 weeks, because that's kind of like cycle that we see, where if you update your games 2 weeks, then people are also going to be coming back into your game to kind of discover what's new inside your game. Otherwise, people are just going to forget that there's an island. And finally, the visual quality of your game is very, very important. And visual quality is not just within the game, where you need to make it look very pretty, but it's also your icons, your banner, because that's usually the first thing that people are going to be seeing when they are in the Discover tab, or when they are in the inside Fortnite. So it needs to be visually high quality, visually appealing from the onset, so that when you're getting inside your game, it looks very, very good. And also, people tend to look at maps that are good looking. So that's pretty much it. So those are the learnings. The public roadmap of UEFN is available. We are adding newer and newer features into UEFN all the time. There's some pretty exciting features that I'm excited about, like physics, for example, like ball physics is something that's pretty cool. So keep an eye on it, so that you can also plan what your next map is going to look like. So finally, I want to end with some ideas. So there's a lot of things that you could do. Like, what does a top-down Polish horror game look like? Could be something that you could think about. Or a Renaissance-era stealth game with detective elements. Or an Arabian action-adventure traditional puppetry storytelling device that you want to use a storytelling device for that. Or I was just at Masai Mara, so I was all like, hey, what if I have a Masai Mara-based exploration game? Or a platformer game around Machu Picchu. So those are all some ideas that you could think about, where you don't have to always make a shooter in a dystopian environment with third-person controllers. You can make a whole lot of games which resonate with your culture, with your audience, with your backyard, so that you could make it, you could own it, and that's kind of what UEFN allows you to do. So that's pretty much it. That's my talk, and I know I have a few more minutes, but that's my talk. So if there's any more questions, I'd be happy to take them. But I'm hoping to see some amazing looking, unique, culturally relevant games coming out of UEFN with all the tricks. And it's not very complex either, right? Just bring in some assets, put in your metahuman, add some nice music, and you're set. So that's about it. So thank you so much. Yeah.